Oh, in this lab what we're going to do is we're going to migrate some virtual machines, and the objective of the lab is to migrate virtual machines with storage Vmotion and also to use Vmotion as well. So what we're going to do, following tasks are use storage Vmotion to migrate a virtual machine from local storage to shared storage. We're then going to verify that the virtual machines do actually meet Vmotion requirements. We'll then just verify our host meets Vmotion requirements. Then what we're going to do is perform a Vmotion migration of the virtual machine. So let's start off with doing a storage Vmotion. What we've got two virtual machines currently sitting on my host here, SC server 06 and 05. So if we just have a look at 5 first of all, what we have is got Brian 05-1. If we have a look at the storage, we can see that if I pull this across, this is sitting on local storage. If I have a look at Brian 05-2, same thing. Tracy 06-1, we have a look at the summary tab, we can see local storage, and Tracy 06-2, again summary tab, we can see sitting on the local data store as well. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to use the storage Vmotion capability, and what storage Vmotion allows me to do is move the files associated with the virtual machine from one data store to another data store. So let's first of all move Brian 05-1 to our shared storage. So we'll right click on the host, click on migrate. What we're going to do here is change data store, and what I want to do here, click the next button, specify my shared VMs folder. Up at the top here, we can decide on the virtual disk format. So on a little drop down here, we can either thin provision the virtual machine, thick provision the virtual machine, or leave it as it currently is. So we'll leave it as it currently is. Click our next button, click our finish button. And if we watch down at the bottom here, we can see the virtual machine files are now moving. So all I'll do here, just open the console to this thing while it's actually moving across. So as you can see, it's all locked at the minute. All we'll do here, just log into the virtual machine whilst it's moving across. So we'll just log in. There we go. Still up and running. No downtime. It is completed. That has proved that we have moved the files whilst the virtual machine is powered on, up and running. No loss at all of functionality. Let's just verify that it has moved by highlighting the virtual machine. We can now see it's sitting on shared VMs. Next thing I would do here is I'd do the same thing with exactly these 3 machines as well. So at some point later on today, what I will do is I'll actually migrate these to shared VMs as well. Okay, task 2 of the lab is to actually verify that the virtual machine does meet the requirements for Vmotion. So again, what we're going to do here is we're going to use Brian 05-1. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure we don't have any CD images connected to this virtual machine. So we'll just edit the settings on the virtual machine. Have a look here. Nope, we're on client device. If we highlight, there's no connection to any CD devices. Next thing to do is just make sure there's no CPU Affinity Settings. So we'll come into Resources, click on Advanced CPU, and we're just making sure there's no actual CPU affinities configured here. So we'll click OK. Next thing to do, just have a look. Yep, we're on the production network. And now what we can also do as well is just to verify that Vmotions will work, we can click on the Maps button associated with the virtual machine. What we can see here, we've got 2 green blobs next to both servers. We can see that Brian 05-1 is on the production network. We can see that both hosts can see the production network. We can also see that Brian 05-1 is sitting on shared VMs, and again, we can see both hosts can see shared VMs. So we're happy that the virtual machine has no restrictions. The next thing I need to do is just verify that the host actually meets Vmotion requirements. So to do this, we'll just click on server 05. Next thing we want to do is just come to our networking under configuration. And under networking, what we have is we've got a distributed virtual switch which is used for Vmotion. Now just because it's called Vmotion doesn't mean it's set up for Vmotion. So we'll just have a look at the VM kernel ports. We can see we've got an IP address, but again that means nothing. So what I'm going to do here is just manage my virtual adapters sitting on my virtual switch. Click on the VM kernel port, but we can see here it is enabled for Vmotion. Need to do the same thing with server 6 where the virtual machine is going to go to. So again onto configuration, distributed switch, just check the kernel port, different IP address, that's good. Manage the virtual adapters, VM kernel port, it is enabled. So I'm happy that I have my networking configured. The next thing I need to do here is just ensure that the processors are the same or from the same processor family. So server 05, click on the summary. We can see, looking down here, CPU information. We can see the number of sockets. What I'm looking for here really is just the processor family. So we can see it's an Intel Xeon E5520. Have a look at server 6. On the summary tab, same processor. Shouldn't have any problems moving this across at all. We can see that hyper-threading is enabled as well on this host. It was also enabled on the other one as well. Now that I'm happy that both hosts are configured correctly, the virtual machine is configured correctly, I want to move Brian05-1 from server 5 to server 6. So all we'll do here, right click on Brian05-1. We already know it's on shared storage, so we'll migrate it across. We'll change the host this time. So all we'll do here is click on change host, click our next button, and we'll move it to server 6. Again, we should be able to do this with very little downtime in the virtual machine. We do have to pause the virtual machine momentarily, but perceptibly there is no downtime. So click next. Specify server 6. We're not going to put it in the resource pool. Click next. We'll do it with high priority because there's nothing really running on this host. So click next again. Read the summary. Click our finish button, and down at the bottom here we'll actually see the virtual machine migrating from one host to the other. There you go, straight away, server 6. Pull this across, the virtual machine hasn't gone down really. And as we can see here, Brian05-1 is now sitting on server 6. So that is a Vmotion now done against the virtual machine. And that's really the end of this lab. We've moved the storage location for the files, and we've moved the memory contents from one server to the other. So that's using storage Vmotion and Vmotion. Thanks very much.